Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with me, Meoni. This time around I want to just briefly talk about E3 2019 that kicked off last night, the 9th of June 2019, and day one basically kicked off. It was live on Twitch and various other places, including YouTube for certain conferences, and essentially I stayed up until about 3 something, I think it was like 3:30 in the morning my time, so I could see everything including the Bethesda conference, but I didn't see the Devolver conference, but then again, I wasn't really missing too much, was I? So, yeah, what did I think about E3? It was fantastic from a day one perspective. I thought the Xbox conference was a little bit dull in places. There wasn't a lot of first-party titles that directly interested me. However, one of the things that really did interest me specifically is that Phantasy Star Online 2 is finally coming to the West. Now, they have announced it for Xbox and PC in the West, which is really hype. However, it does only say North America currently. There isn't a European version announced. So whether or not that's just a thing they'll add in the future, because obviously America and, English and Europe speaking English as a primary language, it's not going to be too difficult to do that. However, that probably means that there's only going to be North American servers. I don't know. We're going to have to see how it goes, and Sega is obviously, unsure of whether this was going to happen in the first place. They said for the longest time they weren't interested in a Western release of Phantasy Star Online 2. We know from Final Fantasy XIV that Naoki Yoshida was directly asked if they would do a Phantasy Star Online 2 crossover, and he refused on the grounds that not everybody in the world could play it. Now that essentially the Western version has been announced, if we do get a European release of this, does this potentially mean we might see that crossover actually happen, or even remotely the possibility of Final Fantasy XIV going onto the Xbox? We do know that Naoki Yoshida has been in direct contact with Phil Spencer, and I'm sure they're ironing out a few bits and pieces here and there, and obviously Square Enix is trying to broaden its horizons. But back to the point of, actual Sega doing a collaboration, I don't know. I don't know if it's still on the table, and I don't think really anybody knows the ins and outs of Sega at the end of the day, so we'll have to wait and see. I'm hoping that there's going to be a European release of Phantasy Star Online 2. It was, Phantasy Star in general was one of my favourite game series when I was a kid, so we'll have to wait and see. So apart from that, we actually got the news that Final Fantasy VII Remake has actually got a release date. I presume that they're still going with the episodic content. I'm not sure. I haven't really been kept up to date with all of the details, but it is scheduled for the 3rd of March next year, so 2020. So that's pretty hype. March isn't all that far away if you think about how fast this year's already going. So it looks interesting. They put out a little trailer. I'll link that in the description. Essentially, it's worth watching. A lot of people are picking the trailer apart and saying it's not how certain things happened in the original game, and being a massive fan of Final Fantasy VII in general, I can see where they're coming from, but it really depends on how faithful they're going to be to the original and how much they want to make a brand new storyline. I don't really know how it's going to fit together. And I'm sure there'll be some knee-jerk reactions over the next few days. However, visually it looks impressive. Whether or not the context is still there, I don't know. So apart from Final Fantasy VII Remake and Phantasy Star Online, there was a few other games that interested me personally from the show. Ghostwire Tokyo, which looks like a very creepy adventure game set in Tokyo in current day. The teaser trailer starts off showing basically modern day Japan and the train journeys of people and escalators, and then it goes really weird and people start to disappear. The lady who was actually talking there, who did really well considering I don't think English is her main language, basically explained how people start to disappear, and it's the job of the player to basically go through this adventure storyline game and find out what's going on. And basically it's described a little bit like a thriller, so it's not a survival horror, it's a thriller sort of game, an adventure game, so I'm all kinds of hyped for that. The footage has some of the most incredible face details on models I have ever seen in my life. There really is some incredible technology on show at E3, and I just want to know what this engine is. I know it's probably pre-rendered cutscene stuff, and it's probably not going to be like that in the actual game, but I have to say it is some of the best CG I've ever seen in my life, so yeah, that's definitely one to keep an eye on. Obviously, final mention should be Cyberpunk 2077, with Keanu Reeves making his announced debut at E3. Everybody went crazy for him being on stage, which is quite rightly so. He is a bit of a legend. He will be in Cyberpunk as a character, presumably fully voice acted, and I believe they use motion capture. It looks pretty much like Keanu. They did bring out a really cool looking trailer though that was more story related this time around for E3, and that game is all the hype. And I believe that's coming out next year in April, and pre-orders have already started on Steam and presumably elsewhere as well, including Amazon I believe, which I think has the collector's edition announced, but I'm not sure if you can purchase it just yet. Either way, that game looks all the hype. I'm extremely excited to see if it lives up to the hype, but it just looks really good. CD Projekt Red are a fantastic studio, and I don't imagine that they can get away with pulling in big names like what they already have, and Keanu Reeves to boot, and actually get away with not pulling off something excellent. So, other mentions for me personally with my gaming tastes include Elden Ring. I love Miyazaki, and the idea of him working with George R.R. Martin from Game of Thrones and obviously Song of Ice and Fire fame is interesting at the same time as alarming to me. It doesn't really explain anything, it's just a little teaser trailer. It does look interesting. It seems to be centered around this Elden Ring, the idea of its unimaginable power or something. That's what I got from the trailer. It doesn't really explain anything. A woman falls to pieces from every hammer blow of an anvil, I think it is. It's interesting. It's more about the announcement of those two individuals working together that's interesting to me, especially considering George R.R. Martin has a lot on his plate already with writing several different books. The man is, he's doing well for his age. He's incredibly talented, but does he really have time to co-write a game like that Miyazaki creates? Either way, there's no announced date for that or anything, but that seems to be From Software's next big project, and I don't know what it is, but I need it. It looks that good already, so they make exceptional games for the most part, so I'm incredibly hyped for that as well. Apart from that, E3 was fairly lackluster in places. The Bethesda conference, apart from the Ghostwire Tokyo announcement, which Bethesda, I believe, are actually publishing, there was very little that interested me. I kind of had a laugh at Fallout 76, where essentially people stood on the stage and said, yeah, you'll be excited because we're adding NPCs to Fallout 76 in the next update, and we're also adding a 50-plus player battle royale mode. I mean, you thought Final Fantasy XIV spaghetti code was bad? That game is just... it just seems to be badly netcoded in every way, so how they're going to be able to support upwards of 50 players at one time is just beyond me. And the idea that they've conceded their original standpoint of NPCs are not needed in the wasteland to make it a compelling story, we can tell it through computer terminals and other messages, and then them going back on that and saying, hey, we were wrong. I mean, it's cool to admit that sort of thing, but at the same time, isn't it a little bit too little too late at this point? I don't know. There's a lot of people that are Fallout 76 mad and Bethesda fanboys, and that's fine, but I just really want there to be a Fallout multiplayer game that I can play and not be bored shitless. So we'll have to wait and see for that one day. And they didn't really talk about Elder Scrolls 6 other than it's in development, and that's what it is, and Starfield, which keeps getting brought up, just the name of it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. What else was there at E3? Is there anything I'm missing? There was a new Xbox announced, Project Scarlet, but there's not any information on it apart from it uses SSDs, which most people in the industry already knew was going to be a thing, considering loading times is the new hip thing that we're going to be focusing on now, which is a good thing to be focusing on, obviously, because PCs have got SSDs, and why we haven't had an SSD until now is another question entirely. So yeah, I'm excited for that. Oh, and they announced that the new Halo Infinite will be the launch title, which is cool. If you like Halo, a lot of my friends love Halo, so I'm not going to say anything bad about Halo. It's a cool game. It looks cool. I would like to play it. It's just, will I be purchasing the next generation Xbox? Based on the current iteration of the Xbox, they'd have to pull some things out of hats for me to be interested. Probably on the MMO side. I'd be interested if they brought out Final Fantasy XIV on there. Opening the game up to a wider audience is always a good idea, but at the end of the day, it comes down to whether or not Sony and Microsoft can, allow for crossplay between those three platforms. It would be if Xbox existed with 14. I don't know. It's an interesting concept and something that's been talked about in previous videos and theorized, but it still doesn't make me believe that it's actually going to happen. But I remain to be corrected. Either way, the Square Enix conference is today, the 10th of June, so I'm extremely excited to see that. We're not going to get the live letter until the end of the week, but I'm extremely excited to see some more Final Fantasy VII news. Hopefully we get some announcements, maybe some crossovers announced. I mean, last year, I believe we got the Monster Hunter crossover announced at E3, but that was pretty hype. So there'll hopefully be something 14 related in here, and maybe even some new IPs that Square Enix are going to announce. Either way, that's it for this video. Let me know what you thought about E3 Day 1 or E3 in general, depending on when you watch this. Whether or not there were some things that you agree with, or things that just stick out in your mind as being something that's incredibly hype for you personally. Either way, thank you all kindly for watching. I thought I'd do this video because, it's just something to do, and we don't have a lot to do before Shadowbringers. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you all next time.